Chapter 1. A Quiet Sunday Morning. The soft golden light of early morning spilled through the wide windows of the Brew Bean, a small coffee shop tucked a few miles from Arlington National Cemetery. The faint aroma of freshly ground coffee, beans mixed with the sweet scent of warm pastries and cinnamon filled the air, wrapping the room in a gentle embrace. Outside, the town was just beginning to stir. Sunday walkers and dog owners passing slowly on the quiet streets. Inside, the low hum of conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine, and the clink of ceramic mugs created a comforting symphony of ordinary life. Ray Thompson, known affectionately as Pops to the locals, sat by the window in his usual spot. At 68, he carried the quiet dignity of a man who had survived wars and lost much but never lost himself. His silver hair was neatly combed, his flannel shirt tucked in, and a small polished Marine Corps pin glinted on his jacket, catching the morning light. His left sleeve was pinned up just below the elbow, a quiet reminder of the arm he had lost decades ago in Vietnam. Despite the missing limb, Ray's posture was alert, his sharp blue eyes flicking between the pages of a worn paperback about wartime strategy, yet scanning the room like a sentinel. Across the room, in a corner table that offered a perfect view of the door, sat Daniel Rivera. At 32, Lieutenant Daniel Rivera was off duty today, dressed casually in a black t-shirt, worn jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over dark brown eyes. A tomb guard at Arlington, Dan was trained to honor the fallen and protect the living, a job that demanded discipline, alertness, and respect for tradition. Though his laptop was open in front of him, half-read emails ignored, his attention wandered to the familiar rhythm of the café, the quiet interactions, the way the light hit the wood grain of the tables, and the faint laughter of a couple of college students studying in the corner. The owner, Lena Harper, moved gracefully between tables, her brown hair tied into a messy bun, her apron marked with years of careful work. She greeted Ray with a smile, refilling his coffee without a word, her presence warm and steady, like the heart of the small shop. "Morning, Pops," she said, setting the steaming cup carefully beside him. "Refill." "On the house." Ray's lips curved into a faint smile, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "You know I can't refuse, Lena," he said softly, voice carrying a low Ohio twang. "Keeps me honest these mornings. Keeps me from forgetting what matters." Dan observed quietly, noting the calm strength in Ray's posture, the measured patience of a man who had seen the worst of life yet remained unbroken. There was a quiet reverence in the way Ray handled his cup, lifted it to his lips, and continued reading, undisturbed by the gentle buzz of the café around him. The tranquility lasted, unbroken, until the unmistakable roar of motorcycle engines shattered the morning calm. The windows rattled as 5 men, clad in black leather jackets adorned with menacing insignias, stormed in. Heavy boots clomped against the hardwood floors, their presence like a thunderclap in the cozy room. Heads turned instinctively. Conversations died mid-sentence, forks paused mid-air, and a hushed tension spread like wildfire. Leading the pack was a man known as Razor Malone, a towering figure at 6'4", bald, with tattoos snaking up his muscular arms. A sneer curled his lip as he scanned the room, the other 4 following. Tommy, wiry with a scar cutting across his cheek. Spike, stocky and aggressive, his eyes darting nervously. Mitch and Carl, moving with predatory grace. They were the Iron Reapers, a gang that had been a growing nuisance in the small town for weeks, and now they had arrived. Razor's gaze settled on Ray immediately, the old Marine sitting calmly by the window. "Hey, old man," he called, voice low but carrying across the room. "You're in my seat, move it." Ray slowly lowered his book, meeting Razor's glare with calm, unwavering eyes. "I've been sitting here every Sunday for the last 10 years, son," he said steadily, voice quiet but firm. "Plenty of tables. Pick another." The smirk on Razor's face faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion and irritation. "What did you just say to me?" he barked, stepping closer, his shadow looming over Ray. Ray didn't flinch. His eyes, bright and sharp, held a lifetime of experience. "I said I'm not moving. You can take a seat anywhere else." His hand brushed lightly over the marine pin on his jacket, an almost unconscious gesture, but one that carried the weight of decades. The room seemed to hold its breath. Lena stood frozen near the counter, hands clasped tightly, her knuckles white. The students in the corner shrank back, fear and curiosity battling on their faces. Dan, however, remained seated for now, observing, calculating, every muscle tensed but face composed. Razor reached for Ray's arm, the gesture rough and threatening. With a sudden move, he grabbed the small pin and tossed it to the floor. The clang echoed like a gunshot. Then he knocked Ray's coffee to the ground, dark liquid spreading across the table and onto the pages of the book. The old Marine's jaw tightened, but his composure didn't break. He had seen far worse than a gang of brash bikers. Dan closed his laptop with a quiet click. He stood, chair scraping softly against the floor, steps measured, calm, and precise. "Hey," he said, voice steady and low. "Pick up the pin and apologize. Walk away, that's your only choice." Razor laughed, a harsh, biting sound, then stepped toward him, fists clenched. "And who are you? Some wannabe tough guy?" "Someone who knows right from wrong," Dan replied evenly. "Last chance. Respect what you don't understand." The fight ignited like lightning. Razor swung a massive fist, but Dan sidestepped, catching his wrist in a practiced grip. He twisted, shoved him into a table. Cups and plates shattered. The others lunged, but Dan moved with precision, ducking under swings, striking elbows, twisting arms, and using the environment to his advantage. Within 60 seconds, the room was strewn with toppled chairs, broken cups, and defeated bikers. Breathing steadily, Dan looked down at Razor, now flushed with humiliation. "Pick up the pin. Apologize." Razor's hands shook as he bent to retrieve the emblem. "Sorry," he muttered, barely audible. "I didn't mean no harm." Ray's eyes softened slightly. "Respect isn't taken," he said quietly. "It's earned. Work on that, son." The quiet cafe slowly returned to life. Applause rippled through the room, strangers and regulars alike recognizing the courage, honor, and restraint displayed. Dan returned to his seat, watching Ray settle back into his usual poise, the marine pin gleaming once more in the morning sun. The day resumed, but a quiet reverence lingered, a reminder that some acts of courage leave a mark far longer than a single moment. Chapter 2. Aftermath and Shadows. The morning light had softened into a gentle haze as Ray Thompson sipped his newly poured coffee, the aroma grounding him after the whirlwind of chaos that had erupted barely an hour before. The small coffee shop, once alive with the quiet hum of Sunday chatter, now bore subtle scars of the encounter. Shards of broken ceramic littered the floor, the faint smell of spilled coffee lingered in the warm air, and a few tables bore the slight dents of toppled chairs. Ray's left hand hovered over his cup, fingers brushing against the smooth ceramic, and for a moment, he allowed himself a sigh of relief. He was still alive, his dignity intact, and the memory of a lifetime of battles, both overseas and personal, felt strangely intertwined with this morning's events. He glanced across the room and saw Daniel Rivera packing his laptop into a worn leather bag. The young tomb guard's dark eyes were thoughtful, reflecting an intensity that reminded Ray of his own years in Vietnam. "You handled that well," Ray said, voice low, carrying the weight of experience. "I didn't know you had that kind of fight in you, Dan." Daniel smiled faintly, shrugging. "I learned from the best, Pops. You don't stand guard over the tomb of the unknown soldier without picking up a few lessons in patience and control. I just didn't want them disrespecting you. That pin, your history, deserves respect." Ray nodded, his eyes drifting to the small marine pin, polished and gleaming, now back on his jacket. "It's not just a pin," he said softly. "It's every man I served with, every promise I made to survive, to honor those who didn't. That's what they were messing with." The cafe had begun to recover its rhythm. Lena moved between tables, picking up broken cups and wiping down surfaces, her warm presence a stabilizing force. "I don't know how you two survived that morning," she said, shaking her head, though a small smile tugged at her lips. "Those bikers, they were something else." You've both got nerves of steel. Ray allowed himself a small smile, then glanced out the window. The street outside was quiet again, except for the distant hum of passing cars and the occasional bark of a dog. But there was a tension beneath the surface, an invisible reminder that trouble could arrive unannounced. "You okay?" Ray asked Daniel, noting the tightness in the younger man's jaw. "I'm fine," Daniel replied. "Better than fine. I hate seeing people take advantage of others. It sticks with me." His gaze drifted toward the door, as though expecting the bikers to return at any moment. The cafe door opened again, not to the roar of motorcycles, but to the soft footsteps of a young woman in her mid-20s. She had curly auburn hair pulled into a loose ponytail and wore a simple gray sweater with dark jeans. In her hands was a camera, which she held delicately as she scanned the room. "I heard about what happened," she said softly, approaching Lena. "Can I take some photos? For the paper? Or just to document it?" Lena hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, just be gentle with the people, all right?" The young woman moved carefully around the cafe, snapping a few photos of Ray and Daniel seated by the window, the morning light highlighting their faces, their expressions calm but marked with the subtle tension of recent conflict. Ray noticed, then gestured lightly to Daniel. "We've got to tell our side of it too," he said. Daniel nodded. "People need to understand what respect means, and what courage looks like, not just in wars overseas, but right here, in small acts of standing up for each other." Outside, the street seemed to hold its breath. The sunlight had grown warmer, brushing the town with golden hues that contrasted sharply with the lingering memory of violence. The encounter had left a mark, subtle but undeniable, not only on Ray and Daniel, but on the cafe, on the patrons who witnessed it, and on the very spirit of the community. As the morning stretched into early afternoon, the small shop began to fill again. Regulars returned, drawn by the story that had already begun to spread through word of mouth. Conversations buzzed quietly, punctuated by the soft clink of cups and the hiss of the espresso machine. Veterans, young and old, trickled in, seeking solace, camaraderie, or perhaps a place to feel a sense of connection. Ray watched them, sipping slowly, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility. He had spent decades in jungles, deserts, and battlefields far from home, yet it was here, in a small cafe with spilled coffee and broken mugs, that he felt the weight of his service in a different, more personal way. Daniel, still alert, leaned back in his chair, studying Ray's face. "You know," he said quietly, "sometimes I wonder if all the training, all the rules are really about survival, or if they're about standing up when it matters, even when you don't have to fight." Ray's eyes softened. "It's about the choices we make, Dan, every single day. And sometimes the smallest choices, the quietest acts, they carry the most weight." The afternoon waned, and Lena brought over another pot of coffee. "On the house," she said warmly. "For both of you. You've reminded all of us why we come here, why community matters." Ray glanced at Daniel, and for the first time, that day, he allowed a faint smile to settle on his face. "You did good today, Dan. Real good." Dan returned the smile, his dark eyes reflecting the sun-dappled light streaming through the windows. "We both did, Pops. For each other. For everyone who couldn't stand up today. That's what matters." Outside, the town carried on, unaware of the quiet heroism that had unfolded within the walls of the small cafe. Yet inside, a sense of peace, respect, and understanding lingered, the air infused with quiet triumph and the knowledge that courage, in all its forms, had been honored. Chapter 3. Rumors in the Wind. The following week dawned with an uneasy calm. Ray Thompson sat by the same window in the small Virginia cafe, his hand resting lightly on the polished marine pin. The sunlight painted golden streaks across his silver hair, yet the shadows of the previous encounter lingered, subtle but unrelenting. The town seemed peaceful, almost oblivious to the tension that had rippled through the streets when the Iron Reapers had stormed into the cafe. Daniel Rivera entered quietly, his dark eyes scanning the cafe with a practiced alertness. Today he wore a fitted navy jacket over his black t-shirt, jeans slightly faded at the knees. Though it was a day off, he carried himself with the discipline of a tomb guard, a blend of calm authority and quiet readiness that Ray had come to respect. "Morning, Pops," Daniel said, settling into the chair across from him. "I heard some rumors while running errands earlier. The Iron Reapers aren't done. They're talking about making another scene." Ray's eyes narrowed, the faint crease near his temple deepening. "Thought they'd be too scared after last week," he murmured, voice low but edged with caution. "Seems like some people never learn," Daniel nodded, his fingers drumming lightly on the edge of the table. "They're unpredictable. And if they think they can bully others without consequences, it's only a matter of time before someone else gets hurt. I'd rather be prepared." The cafe itself was alive with the quiet rhythm of Sunday regulars. Lena moved efficiently, between tables, carrying a tray of fresh pastries, her warm voice greeting each patron. "You two okay?" she asked softly as she placed a mug of coffee in front of Ray. "I mean, after everything that happened." Ray gave a small smile. "We're fine, Lena. It's just, some people never understand what respect means until they're taught." Outside, the street appeared calm, but Daniel's trained eyes picked up subtle signs. A motorcycle parked slightly askew, a hooded figure lingering near the corner. Nothing overt, yet the presence was unmistakable. He sipped his coffee, his mind calculating, anticipating, always on guard. Ray leaned back, scanning the familiar cafe walls adorned with black and white photographs of local history and military heroes. Each image seemed to whisper lessons from the past: courage, honor, resilience. "You know, Dan," Ray began, voice carrying a reflective tone, "it's not just about the fight. It's about knowing why you stand, what you protect. And sometimes the lesson is quieter than a punch or a chase. People remember actions more than words." Daniel listened, absorbing each syllable. "I get that, Pops. That's why I keep my eyes open even on days off. The training, the discipline. It's not just for the tomb of the unknown soldier. It's for life." Ray nodded approvingly. "Exactly. And you've got the kind of patience and resolve that makes people think twice before crossing you. That's rare, especially nowadays." Their conversation was interrupted by the faint rumble of engines outside, subtle but familiar. Daniel's head snapped toward the window, eyes narrowing. "They're back," he whispered, almost inaudible. Ray's hand instinctively brushed his chest, fingers resting over the marine pin dot. The Iron Reapers hadn't expected Ray to be unflinching, nor Daniel to intervene with lethal precision. But now, the atmosphere thickened. The air itself seemed heavier with anticipation. Daniel stood, his stance steady, and Ray mirrored him, unspoken communication passing between them. A silent pact, forged in respect and shared experience. The cafe door opened. This time, it was not the brawling force of last week, but whispers of unease. Two men on motorcycles lingered just outside, leather jackets catching the sunlight. Daniel's gaze followed every subtle movement: the tilt of a helmet, the slight flex of a wrist, the subtle shifting of weight. He counted, calculated, assessed risk. Ray's voice was steady, calm. "We don't need to provoke them," he said. "But we can't let fear dictate our actions either. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's standing up despite it." As the morning wore on, more townspeople began trickling into the cafe, unaware of the silent tension. Veterans, young families, college students, each one carried the normalcy of life in contrast to the lingering threat. Yet within the walls, Ray and Daniel stood as quiet guardians, embodying vigilance, readiness, and the resolve to protect others from harm without seeking confrontation unnecessarily. Daniel finally spoke, breaking the tense silence. "We should probably talk strategy. If they try anything, we need a plan that minimizes risk to everyone else here. Quick intervention, but enough to stop them before anyone gets hurt." Ray nodded, setting down his coffee. "Agreed. And don't forget, intimidation and unpredictability are often their weapons. We'll need calm, precision, and presence." Show them that respect isn't given. It's earned. The afternoon sun climbed higher, casting elongated shadows across the cafe floor. Outside, a single motorcycle engine revved softly, echoing, like a distant drum. Inside, the quiet calm of shared understanding and silent preparation prevailed. Every gesture, every glance, every subtle movement conveyed experience, vigilance, and an unspoken promise. Neither of them would allow injustice to go unchecked. Ray leaned back, eyes meeting Daniel's with a spark of admiration. You've got the right mindset, Dan. That's what I like to see. It's not just about skill, it's about heart. And you've got heart. Daniel offered a faint, respectful nod. I learned from watching you, Pops. Not just about standing up, but how to stand with purpose, with integrity. Outside, the Iron Reapers remained a shadow on the horizon, yet their presence only reinforced the invisible bond forming between Mentor and Tomb Guard. Inside, the cafe continued its rhythm, warm and inviting, yet tinged with anticipation. Ray and Daniel remained seated, their calm vigilance a quiet testament to courage, respect, and the unbreakable human spirit. Chapter 4. The Calm Before the Storm. The following days were eerily quiet. Ray Thompson continued his Sunday ritual at the small Virginia café, his left hand brushing the smooth surface of the coffee cup, as if drawing strength from its steadiness. The scars of past battles, both visible and invisible, had made him cautious, attuned to the slightest disturbance in the air around him. Daniel Rivera arrived mid-morning, his posture calm but alert. The dark eyes of the Tomb Guard swept the cafe with a practiced precision. Today he wore a dark green jacket over his black t-shirt, jeans slightly frayed at the knees, and sturdy boots that carried the weight of readiness. Despite the casual appearance, his presence radiated authority and discipline. Morning, Pops, Daniel greeted, settling across from Ray. You notice anything unusual today? Ray's eyes narrowed as he scanned the street outside. The air feels heavier. I don't like it. The Iron Reapers have been quiet, but quiet doesn't always mean safe. It's like waiting for a storm that hasn't shown its clouds yet. Daniel nodded. Exactly. I've been keeping an eye on them. Their usual hangouts, the bars near the outskirts. They've been active, talking among themselves. I don't think last week's embarrassment sat well. They might be planning something more calculated. The cafe's interior remained a haven of normalcy for the locals. Lena moved between tables, balancing trays of pastries and mugs of steaming coffee. I don't know how you two stay so composed, she said softly, placing a fresh cup in front of Ray. If it were me, I'd be shaking in my boots. Ray offered a faint smile. Experience teaches you patience, Lena, and patience teaches you to see patterns. People like the Reapers. They rely on fear. Remove that, and you see them for what they are. Daniel glanced outside, noting a motorcycle parked suspiciously across the street, the rider adjusting his helmet in a deliberate, almost theatrical motion. They're testing, he murmured, checking our reactions. Ray leaned back, taking a slow sip of coffee. They might be tough, loud, and reckless, but they're predictable. Every gang, every group that relies on intimidation has a rhythm. You just have to recognize it and be ready. The cafe began to fill with its usual patrons, families sharing brunch, students studying, and veterans quietly reminiscing over cups of black coffee. The normalcy of the scene contrasted sharply with the invisible tension threaded through the room. Daniel and Ray's conversation took on a strategic tone. If they try to make a scene again, Daniel said, we need more than reaction. We need control. Isolate, disarm, de-escalate if possible, but if it comes to combat, we must end it quickly and efficiently. Ray nodded, appreciating the tactical mind behind the young Tomb Guard. Agreed. And don't forget, it's not just about fighting, it's about presence, confidence. Let them feel the calm before the storm, not the panic. Outside, the faint hum of motorcycles returned, more deliberate this time. The riders remained across the street, observing, calculating. Daniel's dark eyes tracked every movement, analyzing posture, speed, and intent. "They're not alone this time," he muttered. "Looks like reinforcement." Ray's gaze hardened. "Then we'll be ready. You've got skills, Dan, but more importantly, you've got judgment. That's what keeps people alive. Don't forget that." As the day progressed, the tension became almost tangible. Patrons remained unaware, absorbed in their conversations and cups of coffee, yet an invisible barrier of vigilance emanated from Ray and Daniel. The bond between the veteran and the tomb guard strengthened with each passing hour, a silent understanding that whatever came next, they faced it together. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the café, highlighting the polished marine pin on Ray's jacket and the focused, calm demeanor of Daniel. Each subtle glance and slight movement conveyed readiness, awareness, and an unspoken promise. Neither would allow harm to come to the innocent, nor disrespect to go unchallenged. Lena approached cautiously. "I don't know how you do it," she whispered. "Just sitting here, acting normal, while knowing trouble could walk through that door any second." Ray's eyes softened. "It's not about ignoring danger, Lena. It's about preparation. And trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your skills, and trust in those who stand with you." Daniel added, "And sometimes it's about patience. Let them reveal themselves. Every action they take will tell you more than words ever could." Day waned, the cafe's warmth a fragile shield against the growing shadows outside. The faint rumble of motorcycles faded in the distance, yet the threat lingered, like the distant echo of a storm yet to arrive. Ray and Daniel remained vigilant, not with fear, but with purpose. They understood that courage was not the absence of danger. It was the deliberate choice to face it, to protect others, and to uphold what was right. As evening approached, the café settled into a quiet hum. The sunlight dimmed, casting the room in golden hues. Ray and Daniel shared a silent nod, a mutual acknowledgement that the storm was coming, but they were ready. Together, they had weathered past battles, both on distant battlefields and in small-town cafes. Together they would stand firm against whatever the Iron Reapers dared to unleash next. Chapter 5. Confrontation. The quiet hum of the cafe was shattered mid-afternoon by the unmistakable roar of engines. Daniel's eyes narrowed as 5 motorcycles rolled onto the street, tires skidding lightly against the asphalt. Leather jackets, tattoos, and hardened faces. They were unmistakable. The Iron Reapers had returned, and this time, there was no room for intimidation alone. Ray Thompson's hand rested on the table, fingers brushing the marine pin. His eyes, calm yet piercing, scanned the approaching threat. "They're serious this time," he muttered, voice low but steady. "And they want to fight." Daniel stood slowly, his posture precise, controlled, ready. "I've been expecting it," he said. "Let's make sure nobody else gets hurt." The bikers stormed through the cafe door. Jake Malone, their leader, a towering figure of muscle and tattoos, stepped forward with a sneer. His crew followed, eyes scanning the room like predators assessing prey. Patrons froze, coffee cups midway to lips, forks hovering over plates. "Looks like you two are back for more," Jake growled, voice echoing off the walls. "You got a problem, or are you just gonna sit there like scared little mice?" Ray's calm gaze met his. "We're not looking for trouble," he said evenly. "But we won't step aside for disrespect either. You've made your intentions clear." Daniel's stance was firm, shoulders squared, dark eyes locked on Jake. "This ends before anyone else gets hurt," he said, voice low but unwavering. "Walk out now, or face the consequences." Jake laughed, a harsh mocking sound, and swung his arm toward Daniel. Fast, heavy, meant to intimidate, but Daniel was faster. He sidestepped, grabbing Jake's wrist and twisting it in a practiced motion, sending him crashing into a nearby table. Cups shattered, coffee splashed, a sharp crack echoing like a gunshot. The cafe erupted. Tommy and Spike lunged at Daniel, fists raised. Mitch and Carl followed, attempting to flank him, but Daniel moved with precision, honed by years of tomb guard training. He ducked under swings, countered with elbows, and redirected momentum. One push sent Spike stumbling into Mitch, and Carl collided with a chair, stumbling backward. Ray didn't hesitate. Though older, his experience in Vietnam was unmatched. He grabbed a chair, positioning it strategically to block an attack, using leverage and force with surgical precision. His single arm compensated with technique, each movement measured. Economical, devastating. The battle was fast, less than a minute. The Iron Reapers were thrown off by the coordination, strength, and composure of their targets. Jake scrambled to stand, face flushed with frustration and humiliation. His crew, battered and shaken, exchanged uneasy glances. Daniel released a controlled breath, eyes still scanning for threats. "Pick up the pin," he commanded quietly, voice carrying authority. "Apologize to Ray. Now." Jake, pride shattered, approached slowly, hands trembling, and retrieved the marine pin from the floor. "Sorry," he muttered, voice barely audible, eyes not daring to meet Ray's. Ray's expression remained calm but firm. "Respect isn't taken, son. It's earned. Learn that lesson well." The remaining bikers muttered excuses, embarrassed, and retreated toward the door. Outside, engines roared as they sped off, leaving the cafe in stunned silence. Patrons blinked, unsure of whether to breathe, while Lena rushed to check on everyone. "Are you two okay?" she asked, voice shaking. "That was unbelievable." Ray nodded, picking up the pin and polishing it with a napkin. "We're fine, Lena. Just some lessons taught the hard way." Daniel lowered into the chair across from Ray, a faint smile breaking his otherwise serious demeanor. "You've still got it, Pops," he said. "And I've learned a few things today, too." Ray allowed a small grin, a glimmer of pride and satisfaction in his sharp blue eyes. "Good. That's what it's all about. Courage, judgment, and protecting those who can't protect themselves." The cafe slowly resumed its rhythm, patrons sharing murmurs of awe and relief. The incident spread through town quickly, yet the story wasn't just about the fight. It was about honor, restraint, and the courage to face injustice with both skill and conscience. As the sun set, the warm glow reflected off the cafe's walls, highlighting Ray's marine pin and Daniel's focused, calm posture. Outside, the distant hum of departing motorcycles faded, leaving behind a sense of quiet victory. Together, veteran and tomb guard had defended their space, their values, and the safety of the innocent. Chapter 6. Aftermath and Shadows. The cafe had returned to a fragile sense of normalcy. Sunlight filtered gently through the windows, casting warm streaks across the polished wooden floors. Patrons sipped coffee cautiously, their conversations a soft hum, as though the events of earlier still lingered in the air like smoke from a fading fire. Ray Thompson sat at the window, his left arm resting on the table, fingers brushing the marine pin. Though his posture appeared relaxed, his blue eyes scanned the street intermittently. The events of the past day had left a subtle tension under his calm exterior. Years of experience had taught him that silence after a storm was often deceptive. Daniel Rivera joined him, closing the laptop with a soft click. He wore a dark green jacket over his black t-shirt, jeans frayed at the knees, and boots polished, yet scuffed from his quick maneuvers the day before. "They're not gone," Daniel said quietly, nodding toward the street outside. "They may have fled, but the Iron Reapers are still plotting. Pride like that doesn't die easily." Ray sipped his coffee, eyes narrowing as he studied the shadows cast by passing cars. "True, and they'll likely be smarter, more calculated. That's why we remain vigilant, not out of fear, but because duty doesn't end with a single victory." The cafe owner, Lena Harper, moved between tables, her brown hair tied back in a messy bun, carrying fresh cups of coffee. She paused beside Ray, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. "You two, you handled them amazingly yesterday. I don't know what would have happened without you." Ray smiled faintly. "It's not about us, Lena. It's about protecting the people who have no say in their own safety. That includes this cafe and everyone who comes here," Daniel added. "And about showing that respect, courage, and judgment still mean something. People notice, even those who don't say it aloud." Outside, The distant rumble of engines echoed faintly, a subtle reminder that the threat had not disappeared. Daniel's hand instinctively brushed the edge of the table, feeling the familiar weight of readiness. We need to be prepared, but not reactive. They'll make a move when they think the timing's right. That's our window to control the outcome. Ray leaned back, reflecting on his own history. Vietnam had taught him patience, observation, and timing. He'd carried those lessons into everyday life, not just combat. It's like the jungles, he murmured. You listen, you observe, you anticipate. The enemy shows his hand eventually. A few veterans, who had begun frequenting the café after hearing about the earlier confrontation, approached the table. One older man, a Korean War veteran, shook Ray's hand firmly. You two showed them what real courage looks like, he said, voice thick with emotion. Not just strength, but principle. Ray's gaze softened. Thank you, but it's not just about fighting. It's about the calm before the storm, knowing when to act, and acting with honor when necessary. Daniel watched the interaction quietly, noting the respect that radiated between the veterans. It's why I do what I do, he said softly. Protecting the unknown soldier, standing watch. It's about more than ceremonies. It's about embodying those principles, every day, in small ways and large. As the afternoon progressed, the cafe filled with locals who had heard about the confrontation. Conversations were lively, yet a subtle undercurrent of caution remained. Patrons glanced occasionally toward the door, aware that the storm might return. Ray and Daniel remained vigilant, yet calm. They coordinated subtle signals, hand gestures, slight movements, to communicate silently. Every action carried purpose, every glance calculated. They weren't just protecting themselves, but the integrity of the cafe, the people inside, and the values they stood for. By evening, the cafe had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lena placed a fresh pot of coffee on their table, her hands steady but eyes reflecting admiration. On the house, she said firmly, for both of you. You earned it. Ray picked up his cup, swirling the dark liquid. Patience and observation, he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. That's how you survive. That's how you win without unnecessary harm. Daniel nodded, the fading sunlight casting shadows across his focused expression. And that's how you prepare for what's next, he added. They may come back, but they'll never be able to catch us off guard. Not when we stand together, and not when we hold our principles. The day ended quietly, yet the bond between the veteran and tomb guard had strengthened. Their presence was no longer just about protection. It was a statement of resilience, courage, and honor. The cafe had become more than a place to drink coffee. It was a sanctuary, a symbol of what could be defended when people stood firm in their convictions. Outside, the fading hum of the city carried on, oblivious to the silent warriors within. And inside, Ray and Daniel sat, ready for whatever shadows might rise, knowing that courage and integrity would always guide their actions. Chapter 7. The Final Showdown. The night hung heavy over the small town, streets illuminated by the dim glow of street lamps. Inside the cafe, Ray Thompson polished his marine pin while Daniel Rivera reviewed subtle security measures they had set in place. They knew the Iron Reapers wouldn't stay away for long. Pride and vengeance burned too fiercely in those men. Outside, the hum of engines broke the stillness, low and menacing. 5 motorcycles approached, headlights cutting through the darkness. Jake Malone led the pack, his shaved head and tattoos glinting under the streetlights. His crew, Tommy, Spike, Mitch, and Carl followed closely, faces hardened with intent. Daniel's gaze hardened. They're here, he said calmly, though his fingers flexed instinctively. No hesitation this time. They want to fight. Ray nodded, his posture steady. We've prepared. Let's make it quick, clean, and protect everyone else. As the bikers stormed in, the cafe fell silent. Patrons froze, fear gripping the room, but they trusted the presence of the 2 men who had defended them before. Jake stepped forward, a sneer twisting his face. Back for more, huh? He snarled. This time no excuses, you're going down. Daniel moved first, fluid and precise. He intercepted Jake's initial swing with a practiced sidestep, twisting the man's wrist in a controlled lock. Jake grunted, thrown off balance, slamming into a nearby table. Cups shattered, coffee spilled across the hardwood, echoing sharply. The other bikers lunged together, hoping to overwhelm him, but Daniel's tomb guard training kicked in. He parried, blows with elbows, swept legs to unbalance attackers, and redirected momentum to his advantage. One precise kick sent Spike stumbling into Mitch, while Carl collided with a chair, knocked off his feet. Ray, despite his age and missing arm, moved with surprising agility. Using strategic leverage, he blocked attacks, pushing back with precise strikes, and turned the environment to his advantage. Tables, chairs, and even coffee trays became extensions of his defense, creating barriers between the bikers and the frightened patrons. The fight was intense, movements synchronized like a well-choreographed dance. Daniel and Ray communicated silently through glances and subtle gestures, covering each other's blind spots. Their experience and discipline contrasted sharply with the raw aggression and disorganization of the bikers. Jake roared in frustration, attempting to grab Daniel, but Daniel sidestepped again, grabbing Jake's arm and flipping him onto the floor. Ray moved simultaneously, sending Tommy crashing into the counter while deftly avoiding mugs and broken plates. Minutes passed, though it felt like an eternity to the cafe patrons. Each strike, each maneuver was precise, controlled, and with a singular purpose: to end the threat without unnecessary harm. The bikers, battered and humiliated, struggled to regain composure. Daniel, eyes locked on Jake, spoke with calm authority. "Pick up the pin, apologize to Ray, end this now." Jake, gasping and trembling, retrieved the marine pin from the floor. I'm sorry," he muttered, eyes downcast, voice barely audible. His pride shattered completely. He looked to his crew. They too hung their heads, no longer willing to fight. Ray's gaze remained firm. "Respect isn't taken, it's earned. Remember that." The bikers shuffled toward the door, silent and subdued. Outside, engines roared as they sped away into the night, leaving behind the echoes of their defeat. Patrons slowly exhaled, the tension easing as relief spread through the cafe. Lena approached, tears in her eyes. "You two, I don't know how to thank you enough," she said, voice trembling. "That was unbelievable." Ray gave a faint smile, placing the marine pin back on his jacket. "It's not about recognition. It's about protecting what matters." Daniel sat down, shoulders relaxing slightly. "And making sure people understand that courage, discipline, and honor still exist. Sometimes that's worth more than any medal." The night settled into quiet calm. Outside, the town continued its rhythm, unaware of how close danger had come. Inside, the cafe remained a sanctuary, a place where courage and respect were not just words but lived reality. Ray and Daniel exchanged a glance, understanding each other without words. The final showdown had ended, but the lesson remained clear. Vigilance, discipline, and honor were the true weapons, more powerful than brute strength alone. Chapter 8. Legacy and Honor. Morning arrived quietly over the small Virginia town, a gentle haze softening the edges of the streets. Inside the cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the warm sunlight streaming through wide windows. The events of the past night had become a whispered story that had already begun to spread, drawing curious locals and veterans alike. Ray Thompson sat at his usual table by the window, marine pin gleaming in the morning light. He sipped slowly, savoring the calm. Across from him, Daniel Rivera arranged small notes and emails about upcoming tomb guard duties, though his mind often wandered to the previous night's encounter. The final showdown with the Iron Reapers had tested them both, physically and mentally, but it had also reinforced the bonds of trust, courage, and discipline between them. Lena Harper moved among the tables, her expression lighter now, reflecting a newfound sense of safety and pride in her cafe. Patrons were returning steadily, some curious, some veterans eager to hear firsthand about the heroic defense that had unfolded. One young man approached Ray, hesitant but inspired. "Sir, I heard about what happened last night. Thank you. You showed us what courage really looks like." Ray nodded with a modest smile, brushing a streak of silver hair from his forehead. "Courage isn't about being fearless," he said softly. "It's about standing firm, even when fear is present. About protecting others when you have the strength to do so, and the wisdom not to misuse it." Daniel chimed in, his voice calm but firm. "And about knowing when to act. Discipline and observation aren't just skills. They're a mindset. That mindset saved lives last night." Outside, motorcycles passed quietly, none venturing toward the café. Word had spread quickly. The Iron Reapers were not welcome, and the town's quiet vigilance had become a formidable shield. A group of veterans, ranging from Korean War survivors to younger former soldiers, gathered at the back of the café. They shared nods and respectful glances with Ray and Daniel, acknowledging the unspoken brotherhood forged in both past and recent battles. One older man, his metals glinting faintly under the morning light, shook Ray's hand firmly. "Your fight, sir, reminds us all why we honor the fallen and protect the living. Thank you for standing tall when it mattered most." Ray's eyes softened as he returned the gesture. "It's not just about remembering the fallen. It's about ensuring the living uphold those same values every day. That's how a legacy lives on." Daniel glanced around the café, noting the way patrons now interacted with confidence and calm. Children laughed in a corner, and elderly couples shared stories over plates of muffins. The space that had once been a battleground now radiated community and resilience. Lena approached, a fresh pot of coffee in hand. "On the house," she said, smiling broadly. "For both of you. You didn't just defend this café, you gave everyone a reason to feel safe and proud." Ray took a sip, the warm liquid a small comfort against the lingering memories of the fight. "Safety isn't something you demand," he said quietly. "It's something you earn by being present, alert, and committed to protecting what matters. That's what yesterday was about, and today, it's about ensuring it continues." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of his role not just as a tomb guard, but as a protector in everyday life. "Duty doesn't end when the uniform comes off," he said. "It lives in moments like this, in standing up for what's right even when no one is watching." Throughout the day, more locals and veterans stopped by, drawn not just by curiosity, but by a desire to witness and learn from those who exemplified courage and honor. Photos were taken, stories shared, and a small corner of the café was dedicated. To the heroes of that night, Ray and Daniel included, a quiet shrine to vigilance, respect, and resilience. By evening, the café had settled into a warm glow of community. Ray polished his marine pin one last time, securing it on his jacket. Daniel packed away his notes but left space for the next story, the next lesson, the next act of courage that would inevitably unfold. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, Ray and Daniel exchanged a glance, unspoken understanding passing between them. Their actions had not just repelled a threat, they had inspired a town, reinforced values that were easily forgotten, and created a legacy that would endure long after the engines had faded into memory. In that small café, amidst laughter, coffee, and conversation, the truth was clear. Courage, honor, and respect are timeless, and they live strongest in those willing to stand firm when it matters most. Ray Thompson and Daniel Rivera had proven that, and the town, and the people within, it would not forget.